Hey y'all, welcome to Cmor of Life Unfiltered. We're your hosts, Sam and Alisha, high school sweethearts turned forever partners.
This podcast is about love, learning, and adventure.
We're bringing you the raw, the real,
and the unfiltered. Welcome
to Cmor of Life
Unfiltered.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Alisha.
Let's get to it.
So, today, tell the people, what do we plan to discuss?
We're going to be discussing some big life changes. Like the kind that you can relate to in the sense that you've had this plan all along and then somewhere along the lines, you realize that's not the plan you want anymore.
Things change, people change, your mindset changes.
Correct.
So what does that look like?
Well, for me, it looks like leaving the classroom.
So let's take it back for the people who aren't aware. Your journey.
So I have been an educator for the last 9 years, fully committed into the classroom. However, I've been in education for about 11 years because I worked in schools before that. So my journey in the classroom was an interesting journey because I did not want to start as an elementary school teacher, which is where my career landed me.
Why didn't you want to start in the elementary school?
I wanted to start as a high school teacher. That was my goal once I decided what I was going to go to college for. And while I was in college, I was taking classes and I started doing student teaching opportunities. And I realized that while in the classroom, in a middle school, while in the classroom in a high school, which is where I ultimately wanted to be, a lot of the students were at a level that I didn't expect. So while I was in a high school classroom, I was like, I'm going to be a reading teacher. I love reading. I want to teach reading. I want to teach kids who are learning English. And then I realized while there were so many students who hadn't surpassed the 4th grade reading level.
Wow.
And
they were in high school.
They were in high school. And it was a big deal for me because in school I went through gifted classes starting in the 3rd grade. My parents were asked if I could skip a grade, and that's not to say that I'm like this super genius, because I'm not.
Baby genius right here.
But I had a different educational experience. And so when I was seeing students at such a low achieving level, it kind of shook me to my core. I didn't know that that was the world they were experiencing. And I remember my 4th grade teacher, and I loved her dearly. She was my dad's 3rd grade teacher. And so knowing the level they were
you got to tell people you were from Jersey City, New Jersey. It's a small town, essentially. It's a city and all, but it's essentially a small town.
Right.
So you could have a situation where your 4th grade teacher is your dad's former 3rd grade teacher.
That's true. And so, I had this like incredible experience with my learning journey as a child, and seeing these kids and knowing that they were struggling, I realized I wanted to pivot. And pivoting for me looked like going into elementary education. But because I wanted to jump into that journey, I decided to study for elementary education and get my master's in special education for K through 12, because in the event that I wanted to go back into the high school setting, I wanted to be well prepared.
I want to go on a lighter note. I remember you were interning and being a student teacher in a high school, and you came home and you were like, so I'm short, I look young, and these people think that I'm a student. They think I'm a high school student. And, at this point, you're in your early 20s.
Yes.
In college, and you're in a high school setting, and not only do the teachers think you're a student, but, you had some folks hitting on you.
Correct. This was, some time ago, so it was a very different looking Sam. But I realized...
Stop it. You can still look like a high school student.
I realized that I needed to go on a different journey in my academic career and in my career overall. And I was blessed and lucky enough to have gotten a position with my first internship. And although it wasn't the grade level that I wanted, it was the door that opened for me, and I took it with grace. or I hope I did.
You did great.
And I jumped into a second grade classroom, which taught me so much about the littles, and it gave me an experience that I hadn't experienced before. So I started with those itty bitties, and then the following year I moved into the fourth grade classroom, which is where my ultimate goal was. So most of my career was spent in fourth grade.
Yeah.
And I thoroughly enjoyed fourth grade. It was something that was beautiful for me. It was exciting for me to learn the things that the students were learning and how to teach it and how to reach them and all of that. And it gave me insight into the communities I wanted to work with, kids that grew up like me but experienced education differently. And so it just kind of opened my mind to different experiences that could be had, reaching the level of my families and where they were.
Yeah, of course, of course. So a little bit about being in the classroom, right? What that day to day looked like for you, how you felt day in and day out. Like, give us a little bit of a glimpse into what that really looks like. Because people talk about teachers all the time. They're like, oh, we love teachers. Or, people have other feelings about what teachers should teach kids in the classroom, how much money teachers should make, the fact that they get the summers off, they have this job that is not that stressful after all because you get 2 months off, but no one else is with you in them 10 months that you're there day in and day out. Not to mention, the biggest component of it is you're with other people's children every single day. And the same way they tell us as adults that we spend more time at work than we do at home, you're spending more time with these people's kids than they are.
This is true.
For most of the time, unless it's summer or spring break or another holiday break, you are there with them day in and day out. They're like your kids essentially.
Right. And that's exactly what they become. They become my kids. I always said it. I said it to the parents. I would tell them as soon as they met me, as soon as your baby walks through the store, they are my baby, and we are a team, because the goal is to help them achieve success in ways that you couldn't imagine.
Of course.
And of course, it's a fourth grade classroom, right? And
what kind of age group is that? Fourth grade?
So we're looking at 9, 10, 11, and walking into the school building was one of my favorite things because I always love to say good morning to everyone. I, if you haven't noticed, have a very bubbly personality. And so being in the school setting just kind of allowed me to be that bubbly person at 7 a.m. every day. And it was nice to be able to experience the joy the kids got from being able to say good morning really loud to you at 7 a.m. So my day to day was walking into the classroom, and one of my very first professors ever while in junior college, she was a principal of 30 years, so she was an adjunct professor, and she said, I'm handing you this smiley face magnet to remind you that every time you walk through that door, you leave everything that has bothered you, that has affected you at home, at that door, because those kids rely on you as soon as you walk in. And education has been a complete journey because I've gone through, changes in where I've lived. So I've changed states, I've changed cities, and I've even experienced COVID in the classroom. Before COVID, when we walked out the classroom and didn't come back. During COVID, when we taught online. Post-COVID, when
taking this room and making this room your classroom. Yeah.
At some point, this was my space. And my space.
The young people don't know what MySpace is. Don't even do that. Don't do that to us. You're making us seem a lot older than we really are.
I am. But honestly, it was such a thrilling journey. And it was very stressful, hella stressful. I would go to work and I would have anywhere between 19 to 26, 27 students relying on me, depending on the day, depending on the classroom, every year. And every time they walked in, they needed me and I needed to be available for them.
Yeah.
And it was a interesting experience as a young adult and as a young teacher. My first 3 years, I was flying by the seat of my pants.
I still am.
I was. And honestly, year 5, I started to feel stronger in who I was in the classroom and started to experience, like, okay, not only do I know what I'm doing, but I'm able to adjust and make the changes needed when I need to for my kids without feeling the overwhelming and intense feeling you get from the others who are a part of that journey. And not that admin or anyone was bad to me in my educational journey, but they have things that they're required to do.
Yeah, there's still pressure.
Right,
There's a level of pressure. And it comes from all over, right? They're being pressured, so they feel the need to kind of convey that in a sense. So it's not one independent situation.
Right. And so you experience all of those things. In year 7, I was like, I know what I'm doing. Walk into my classroom if you will. You'll get to experience me. If you have feedback, I will always take your feedback. But year 9, when I walked into year 9, I knew that it was my stopping point. I don't want to say my end point because I don't know what the future holds for me.
Of course.
But it was my stopping point. And it was a buildup of many years of different experiences. But this class, when I walked into it, I knew that I was going to over excel with them. I was going to give them the best version of me. I was going to crack down and make sure we rocked out that year. And then I was going to say goodbye. And it was a very wow.
It's okay. It's okay.
It was a beautiful journey.
Yeah.
A great way to experience the classroom.
Yeah. Well, you ended on a high note, right?
I did.
And like you said, it's not a complete end, but you paused. You paused on a high note. I think that's a good way to kind of talk about it, because I think growing is realizing that you can shift. Right? You can say, I want to do something else. And if you want to come back, it's not like, oh, you came back to this thing. You didn't leave anything, right? Like, it's not like you left a toxic situation and you returned to toxic, right? No, you are growing as a person. You have a love and a passion for something, and the door's still open. Everyone told you that on your way out, right? Like, they were devastated in their own right, but you left the classroom for now.
Right.
And whatever that may look like, it can be different, right? You have so many other opportunities.
Right. And so I'm not sad that I've left the classroom. I think it was my time to experience a new version of me. Education has been my identity. Being an educator has been my identity for 9 years. I was driven, the decisions I make, the things that I do, and I think that I wanted a change in how I experienced life for a bit.
Yeah.
And so we spoke for some time and how that would look and what change that could be. And so I think that it was beautiful to have that experience and end the way, well, again, not end, pause the way I paused to be able to shift.
I wanted to ask you, and you can take your time with this. If we have to come back to it, then we will. But what would you say was the most difficult part, not of pausing, but of being in the trenches at the times that you were? Like, I can think of some things just as your spouse, but just there's so many professions, right? But I think being in education, especially primary education, right, comes with challenges.
So thank you for bringing that up. I personally, although the classroom was a space that I created, or my classroom was a space that I created into a safe zone, politically, there were a lot of challenges to be dealt with. My students knew I was married. Whenever I would discuss my marriage, in the sense that they asked a question, they say your husband, I would correct them and say my spouse. I never identified that my spouse was in fact my wife or a woman, but I felt it was important to stress that I was not married to a man, in the sense that I had a spouse, I did not have a husband. And that was to respect the families and their wishes, but also it put a strain on me. And not because I want my kids to know things, but I did at one point have, or for a very long time, have a safe space zone poster in my classroom that was no longer allowed. I dealt with having to come out to all of my colleagues over and over, although in my last school many were accepting. It just that constant having to tell everyone all over again because everyone just assumes. But not only that, I struggled with working in a Title I school, working in a school with low socioeconomic status,
Yeah.
and having to deal with breaking that barrier between school and the parents when people just couldn't understand or get along in that sense. I had to deal with the districts coming down hard because we were a low performing school for such a long time, and they wanted to see better, which rightfully so, but it was a struggle again to bridge that gap between students, families, and the school. So it was very taxing mentally to try to make all your students reach those goals when 80% of your class is below the benchmark. And so that was very overwhelming. And I would come home and I would stress about it. I would talk about it. I would cry about it because I wanted to be, again, the best version of myself for my students all the time. But it was overwhelmingly disappointing when I couldn't be, or when the expectation was that 100% of my class succeed on every single level and 80% of them were below level to start. It was just a very difficult, I felt like tug of war.
Yeah.
Really.
It's so fascinating because, like, I obviously have a little bit more insight than many others will have, and that's just because I'm married to you. But when I hear people talk about schools being a safe space, but then there's this notion that we're going to change that essentially because we need home to be the only safe space. I thought that was such a interesting concept, and it became very political, and I never understood why, because again, you're spending far more time with these children than their own families. But I watched you navigate that in the best way that you could. And when you would tell me things, I would just be like, "Oh, okay, wow, you thought about that on a dime, right? Like that was quick thinking." And I have the privilege of working where I work, where I don't have to think about navigating those things and working, right? I think that's one of the things that I admire the most about you and teachers in general, that you guys are really working like multiple jobs in one, right? Like, sure, I got to deal with my boss, but you've got to deal with your boss, you got to deal with the parents, you got to deal with the students. It's just so many things. So even when you came home and you mentioned, like, oh yeah, I always just use the word spouse. I didn't even think about that. I couldn't, like, I would have been thinking like partner or something like that. But like, yeah, we're married now, spouse. Okay, cool. So if a student says this, you're just going to say spouse. And then for you to have to keep thinking about that, my goodness, I would have failed epically. I would have got fired and I would have been trying to figure it out. And you know, kids are curious. They just are. So when people say like, well, they don't need to know your business, of course not. But these are natural conversations that are happening in the classroom, right? Like I remember when I was in second grade, my teacher was pregnant. I'm like, what? Like, I didn't think my teacher could be pregnant. Not because I even knew how she got pregnant, but because, what are you doing pregnant? What do you mean you're having a baby, right? Like, it's just me. You have kids. You have something else outside of this classroom with me, right? It's just like a bizarre concept. So, no, I applaud you, and I commend you for the year that you just had, but for all the years you've had in education. And of course, living in Florida does not make it easy with our climate, but you guys rocked it the banned books, all that good stuff. We won't go all deep into all of that, but quite a struggle, and I can understand why that would be taxing.
I do want to say shout out to the various teams that I've had over the years because no one team had ever been the same. But my very last team, I would love to shout them out because they were amazing and they held it down with all the things that I put on this final year
Yeah.
between organizing a free book fair, a career day, additional activities that we had planned throughout, just celebrating the different months. It was just my team helped me hold it down and really helped me make my last year in that classroom a phenomenal experience.
A big hoorah, a big hoorah. So let's pivot a bit on that note.
Yes.
What's next?
So, actually, I have decided to fully dive into the many adventures that we have going on between our businesses. So, before I talk more about that, I'd love for Alisha to share some of her journey career wise.
Well, I'm a lawyer by education, so I remember there being a point in time. I've always said I was going to be a lawyer from the onset, as long as I can remember, as a child. And when you grow up with Haitian parents, you don't have a lot of options. So becoming a lawyer was pretty natural. But I remember there being a time where I thought I wouldn't do it, and it was mostly just fear. But now that I've been here, I've been doing this for 7 years. I obviously have zero regrets becoming a lawyer. That was important to me. And during these 7 years, I've transitioned a bit from government to private practice, from working with judges to working with just other attorneys and not being so neutral like I was when I was working with judges to advocating for one side over the other. And that's just been, it's been an experience. It's been rewarding. And I think the thing that I like the most about what I do now is the flexibility that it offers me. When I was in government, I was limited in the extra, right? I wouldn't be able to do the extras.
Can you define what that means? Or not define, but elaborate a little?
Yeah. So when you're working for the government, you have to disclose things. You can't necessarily take on additional businesses, side hustles, you name it. You're in the public view. And so it's very important that you kind of maintain that status quo. And there would be things that you would have to disclose to the government as well, additional funds you're making, if you had businesses that could potentially be a conflict for the government, then all of that would play a factor in whether or not you would get approval. And if anyone knows me, like, getting approval and having to run things up is not necessarily my strong suit. I really do believe that when you're an adult, if you're not doing anything, illegal or completely in conflict with your job, then you should be able to do it. And so this idea that I would have to, like, ask permission to have a business, once that business is not conflicting with what I need to do as an attorney, I don't think that I should have to ask for permission. And I struggle with that. And so that was a big deal for me. And it was important for me because I always knew that being a lawyer was never going to be everything for me, right? I always knew that there would be other things that would pique my interest. And I am the type that if I'm interested in something, it may be for 5 minutes, right? Like, I may only be interested in it for a solid 5 minutes, like the guitar that I have in this room that I don't play. You're interested in it for a solid 5 minutes, and then you change your mind. You don't want to do it anymore.
But I think that's the whole point of this episode. It's about realizing that you can change your mind.
You should change. Like, yeah. You shouldn't be stuck in anything.
I agree.
I think a lot of us fall victim of that, right? You get stuck, you get complacent, you get to thinking that, like,
that's it.
This is it, right? And don't get me wrong, consistency is good. I like consistency, right? But you can change it, or mine. You can change it up. And like I said last episode, You can have it all. Like I still am a firm believer of that. So
You
this
can have it all.
so this idea that I would be limited really caused some panic in my mind. And being in private practice does not limit me in that same way. And so that was important for me. And I know a lot of people also are going to know one of the bigger factors of why I left government and went into private practice is for the money, of course. And we'll talk some more about like finances and things like that as the season progresses. But one of the things that I was talking to someone recently, and I was telling them when I was in law school, what feels like forever ago. I guess I started law school a decade ago now. Wow, I'm getting old. When I was in law school, I had heard about a job opportunity that was going to pay $60,000, right? This is 2015. I was going to come out of law school in 2018 and make $60,000 off rip. I was excited about that, right? At that time. And as I went through law school and I realized how much money there was out there, and now being in the real world, being around different people and seeing how much more money there is in the world, I always felt like I should try my best to go out there and get it. If I have the education and someone wants to pay me for it, I should try to make as much of it as I can. And so that obviously did play a big factor in my decision to leave the government as well. And then I think the third and final factor was this opportunity to be on the business side of the law at some point. When you work for the government, your client is the government. So there's really not this opportunity to bring in business. There's always business because the government's always in some trouble one way or another. Either people want to sue you or you have some conflicts. So there's always work, but you're never going to be on the side where you're bringing in the work necessarily, talking to the clients in that sort of business relationship, which I've always had a desire for that since an early age. I always tell Sam my first job was walking a dog, and I hated dogs. So why did I have a job?
She loves them.
I know,
now.
I love them now. I've got two of them. But like, I was also just terrified. Not like I hated dogs because I didn't like them, but because I was terrified of dogs. And I started walking this lady's dog for $1 a day. Like that was literally my job, walk her dog around the neighborhood because I just was a businesswoman from the jump, even though I was like terrified of dogs. And this dog was no dog to be terrified of. This episode of Cmor of Life Unfiltered is sponsored by Your Esquire Realty, where legal experience and real estate knowledge converge. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, Your Esquire Realty is here to guide you every step of the way with confidence and care. Visit your-esquire-realty.com or call 954-247-1491 to start your real estate journey today. When I'm doing the law, it's like high pressure all the time. And then when I was doing real estate, it was like fun. I was being a regular person, like talking to people in a very regular and natural way, right? You want to buy a house, and I'm going to take you around. I'm going to be in my car, you're going to be in yours, and we're going to just drive around. We're not going to sit across the table in suits, going at it, right? We're not going to sit up all night reading cases, working on the same paragraph of a brief for 3 hours. We're going to be regular people with a real life regular goal, right? And I really don't use the word regular to be insulting or to bring it down. I really mean just like this is a regular occurrence that happens in all of our lives. You need a place to live. Whether you're buying or renting, you need a place to live. Whereas
it's a relatable experience.
Relatable, that's the word, right? So it was very comfortable, right? I could put on a polo shirt and
loosen up.
Exactly. and it was just so rewarding too on a more immediate impact, right? We might be spending 1 to 2, 3 months together finding a property or trying to sell your property. And the law tends to take a lot longer. You know, we might not get a victory for 3 or 4 years. And so it was like this immediate rush, and it was such a relatable experience. And people really are so grateful for it. Whereas there are times with lawyers, you know, it can be pretty expensive for people and you may not get the result that you want. Whereas in real estate, I want to say 90% of the time, you're getting like that. You get to choose the house, right? No one's forcing you into the house, right? And you get to agree to the buyer's purchase price if it's on the other side. So it just really was a fun experience. It always has been, and till this day, I really just enjoy it.
So after becoming a realtor, what was the next step for you?
So then I became a broker, and I wanted to open up a real estate brokerage, have agents working under me, and have that experience. And that was for a variety of reasons, right? Mm-hmm. One was just I was seeing some of my peers that I started with not develop or not have the resources. And I thought, why not put myself in position to kind of mentor newer agents, younger agents, inexperienced agents. And also the times that I'm tied up, right? If I'm tied up with the law, it's a big case, or I just have a lot of hours, a lot of work, I can't always be on the field. And by being a real estate broker, I'm able to kind of delegate some of that to my agents, which gives them an opportunity to make money while I'm still also having an opportunity to benefit from that, as opposed to some of the things I was doing before I was a broker, which was essentially just giving away leads and opportunities because I was too busy to work them myself.
So, going off of that, you have entered the real estate world. This is your realm, safe space away from the law, but also connected to the law. Mm-hmm. What other ventures have you embraced within this?
Still keeping it real estate focused. There's a desire to own more rental properties. We have one. We'd like to have more that belong to us. Recently expanded on the real estate front, buying into a property management company, bringing that in, which has been absolutely rewarding, but a very interesting experience than what I'm accustomed to. Just that one, it really is working with landlords, working with tenants, bridging that gap for them and trying to really keep both sides happy, because on the one hand, the landlord is your client when you own a property management company, but you need the tenant in order for the landlord to be happy, right? Because if the landlord's not making money, then you're not making money. So even though the landlord's our client, having to make sure we keep essentially their client satisfied has been quite challenging when you think about how you have to do both. So that's been interesting, but another business venture under our belts.
Right.
So what are you going to be doing?
Taking it all the way back. After deciding to hit pause on my instructional journey as an educator, I decided that one of the things that I would dive into is the business. Because she mentioned before, one of the reasons why she left the government was because she wanted to experience the benefit of working in big law and having the option to attain more. And I feel like although education is very rewarding within itself, while also being exhausting, I feel it's unfair how we get paid as educators, especially because of the amount of time and effort we put into the students that we grow to love and adore, and all of the work we do for our schools and activities we put on for the families. And so I felt like one of the things that I wanted to do was allow myself an opportunity to experience something more that could potentially bring more of rewarding outcome for me in the financial sense. Educationally, being in the classroom was extremely rewarding, although overwhelming. But I wanted to experience something that could open the door for something new. And we talked about my position within the business and how I could involve myself in order to assist her. Although I'm not a realtor, I have been involved in other ways, and I would love to expand that in order to help us grow as a business.
And I definitely need her.
I haven't officially started yet because I am still on summer vacation.
Yeah, exactly. We got to talk about that. It's so interesting because when I was talking earlier about the flexibility that being in private practice allows, it's very challenging for you to do other things outside of education when you're in the classroom, right?
Right.
Everything from, them having a say, and not necessarily a say, but being on the forefront of what maybe you might post online or social media, or having additional time for other ventures. It's much more challenging than someone in my position. And so having you on board, having you here to help manage the business is definitely going to be good for me and my stress level. But I want to pivot, and this is not something on our cards, but because this is about our journey, our relationship, what are your apprehensions about us working closer together? Obviously, we've always been dealing with the businesses together, not super close, but nonetheless, what would you say are some of those?
So, part of our back and forth throughout my time of figuring out how I would hit pause on my career was what it would look like after. I somewhat hit a pause in my career prior to this time, and I struggled with what would come next. So my immediate reaction was to get right back into the classroom, and it was not good for my mental health. I was wanting something different, and I didn't allow myself that opportunity.
Sure.
And so when we were discussing my pause this time around, like my official pause of not going back for some time, we discussed me going into the business. And although my immediate reaction was like, yeah, I can do this, I got this, like I can jump into business, I've created the website, I've done the social media platforms, I got this, I'll just, dive right in. I also kind of hesitated because Alisha is very much a person who has this drive to fit something into whatever time she has available. So she is very, if I have free time, it's not free because I have things I need to get done. And that is a great quality for her, right? Previously, as mentioned in episode 1, I am undiagnosed ADHD. And so my level of work varies. Now, don't get me wrong, I am great at meeting deadlines. I have done my job as requested and more, but we've never officially worked together in a more serious setting. Now, we've done little jobs here and there back in college where we worked together, but those weren't...
Oh, so don't forget about them college days,
I know, but those...
solid job making right there, okay?
They were. We made really good money together, but those days were very different, right? These jobs now are our very own businesses. So once I was like, yeah, I can do it, I kind of hesitated and was like, wait a minute, can I do it? Not because I don't think I can do the job, but because will we work well together?
Yeah.
Will this be something that is going to literally drive us insane and make us have a difficult relationship outside of the business, which...
Like, what impact is this going to have on our marriage, right? Like, that's the bottom line. Like, will we want to kill each other? You know what I mean?
Right. And those are all things that anyone has the right to think about, or
Of course.
anyone should think about, because it's a big deal to go into business together. But one of the things we did discuss was taking this opportunity for me to dive into the business post my pause, but also allowing a sort of grace period, if you will, where we see how it works once we have a schedule and a system in place where I am a part of the business. And so making sure that we can follow that and make it work without interfering with our marriage, and only focusing on the business when it's business and focusing on our marriage when it's marriage. Now, granted, those things will mix, but we did agree on that grace period. You know, if it works, then great. We'll continue the process and we'll grow from there. And if it doesn't, then we'll have to pivot.
But stay married.
Yeah.
That's the most important part.
Stay married, but pivot in the business sense, you
Yeah.
know, and not in the way where I won't be involved at all, but the way I will be involved will be very different. And so I think that was important for us, because it was a huge hesitation for me. And I am a firm believer in therapy. I go to therapy. I enjoy it very much. And one of the things I did talk about was my apprehension with this big change and what it would look like. And so when we came to that conclusion, I felt it was very healthy for us, because I was struggling big time. You know, leaving the classroom, I was so ready. I was like, yes, this is it. This is my time. But man, those kids changed my life this year. And I didn't think I would cry. I definitely cried. And I cried. I was heartbroken because my career was stopping, and where, you know, it was something that I had worked so hard for. You know, I have my bachelor's, I have my master's, I did my AA before all of that. Like, it was so much work put into it, and then it was like, I'm stopping it. Now what? What's gonna happen next? But I think that sometimes we just need to stop, and we need to reevaluate, and we need to readjust and reframe, you know, and what comes of that could be a whole new journey. I'm diving into the business, or it could be taking a break and then going right back into the classroom, or whatever else it is.
That's why we're calling it a pause.
Right.
And I think that that's a fair thing. And I think if more people gave themselves the grace and the ability to just take a pause on whatever it is that they're going through or they're working towards, it will really allow you the opportunity to figure it out. So just to wrap up, I wanted to bring up the idea where people have been sharing these memes, and they basically say, going to the job I prayed for, and it's a person crying. It's like a baby crying, and they're just distraught, right? And so it's become a meme. I've sent them out. And what do you tell someone who's feeling that way? They're feeling like, I can't leave the job that I begged for, that I prayed for, that I worked so hard for. Earlier, you were talking about the degrees that you obtain to be in that position. So someone who's feeling that way, what would you share with them? Last moments, last thoughts on that.
In the wise words of Alisha Moriso, you deserve it. You deserve it. I think that if you're feeling a need for change, if all signs point to yes, do it, your heart is telling you, your mind is setting up a plan, follow through and make it happen. I've talked about this in other conversations that we've had, but if you followed the road to get where you are in that moment, there are many other roads that can bring you to a new experience.
Yeah. Because you stole my words, all I can do is say I echo that. The same way you deserved to be put in the position you once prayed for, you deserve to be put in your next position, whatever that looks like. It can mean putting a pause on what you're currently doing and embracing something else. You deserve that opportunity. Or it can mean staying where you are and taking on new roles, new positions, new side hustles, if you in the back of your mind are saying, I want something else, you deserve something else.
Correct.
And that should be enough.
I agree.
And with that, we ask you to continue to see more of life
unfiltered.
Until next time.
Thanks for sharing this moment with us on Cmor of Life Unfiltered. If you felt a spark, learned something new, or just laughed along, hit follow, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs it.
You can find more love, learning, and adventure at cmoroflife.com. That's CMOR and across our socials at cmoroflife_.
Until next time,
keep living unfiltered.